Hey everybody, Shay here, and this is going to be a book vlog for the books that I read in the month of August. This was a pretty epic month in terms of reading cadence. I'm finally sort of finding my stride, blocking times in the day so that I can enjoy a good book, and that's something that I took months to be able to line that up so that it worked with my schedule. And I guess like to talk about this a little bit up front, I encourage like anybody that has a hobby or something that you want to get into, have to put the time into finding out where you're going to put that into your schedule, right? Because a lot of us have like conditioned work, conditioned behavior. We have a job, we have family, we got responsibilities we got to do around the house. And before you know it, the week is over. And before you know it, the month is gone. And before you know it, the season is over. And before you know it, it's winter again. And before you know it, it's Christmas. And then it's, and it's like time flies, man. And so reading was something I really wanted to get back into, and not even just like casually. I mean, I really read a lot when I was younger. I would say like in my teens, I picked up reading. I was very, very much an introvert. And so my escapism was to these other imaginary worlds. And from my teens into my early 20s, I still read a lot. I gamed a lot too, but I was always the dungeon master, game master. And so I read the gaming books. Even if I wasn't able to play, I always read things with settings, with world building. Like escapism came from those settings, And so I would collect setting books, even if I never got to play in the setting, because I love to read. And then something happened, man. I know when it happened. I mean, you become an adult. Those other responsibilities, work became more. I was in startups, and so it was very grueling. I traveled a lot for a few years there. I was back and forth into Europe and whatnot, and it didn't really work. Like I could take a couple books with me on the plane, but then before you know it, I'm trapped in a bunch of other cycles in a foreign country. I kind of have to understand my way around, and I'm there for a couple months at a time. And so by the time that kind of life ended, and I ended up in my corpo job that I'm in now, and it's like I was supposed to be a 1-year contract. I'm there for 14 years. Yeah, it makes a huge difference, because like the scaling happened in those 14 years to the point where there's just a lot of headspace gets wasted, and that routine isn't so much like my life routine, but my headspace routine. YouTube started somewhere in those 14 years, 10 years ago to be exact, almost to be exact. And I'm pretty good at sort of finding new rails. I'm not going to force myself back on the rails that don't work for me. I'm going to find new rails, And if it's not that set of rails, it doesn't matter because I'm already off the rails. So it's okay for things to not be okay, but you do have to sort of have a plan. Or you have to not care, but not caring has to be your plan. There's ways around this stuff. I want to say psychologically, there's like methodologies, there's ways that you can get yourself to find new rails is what I'm saying. And for me, one of those sets of rails was reading. I wanted to get back into reading. I really missed the sort of sounds weird saying it this way, but it's the words that come into my head, okay? The introverted, personal, private escapism pipeline that books provide. None of those words seem to, like, I was trying to get to some other words, I think, but then it didn't work out. I think you got the picture. But here's the thing. A person has a finite amount of time in their day, in their week, in their month, and in their year. And before you know it, years just seem to be disappearing. The older you get, the years disappear very rapidly. So part of it is like I have to take the breaks to just escape a little bit, read, and if I'm tired, I need to accept the fact that I'm tired, and I can't keep pushing myself to do things. Not just YouTube. I constantly just push myself to work after work on stuff, and that needs to stop. I'm getting old, man. But at the same time, I want to create content that I can share with people along the way, and so I'm going to share this. The first 2 books that I read, I'm going to do it this way because it's going to be easier. As part of the America Falls series, it's I think on book 13 or 14 at this point. I'm not even sure. But anyways, I had read books 1 to 3. It's written by Scott Medbury, and it's an indie published work right now, and you can get all of the audiobooks for free on his YouTube channel, which is very gracious of him. I ended up reading book 4 of America Falls called Rude Shock. I'm not going to get into synopsis and stuff like that, especially on a series that's 4 books in. Like if you pause the video, you can kind of read the synopsis here and see like it's a pretty high rated indie book, to be honest, a 4.2 here. And I ended up reading book 5, Luke's Trek. And again, I'm not going to give context as to what this means because it's not going to mean anything to anybody who hasn't read book 1 to 3. This is a very long series. If I were to give like an elevator pitch for this, like imagine Walking Dead, but it's like it's like honestly it's like the coronavirus it takes on America. Now this was written before the whole COVID epidemic thing was a thing. So this was like it's like years before that became a thing. Book 1 was released, so that's how I understood things from the fandom of this series. And it's a pretty lively fandom. So if you want to kind of get into the audiobooks and get into this series, and then get into the comments, see what people are saying. I think it's a pretty lively community based on my experience so far with them, and I'm happy. And I think one day I'm probably going to do a longer episode for this series where I go book by book and maybe talk about the narrative elements of it along the way, or character stuff. If that works, like if it works if it works for the schedule and it makes sense, then maybe I'll do that someday when I get a little bit deeper into the series. Right now, I'm really surprised by the quality of the indie book. I didn't think I'd like it. I like the first quarter of book one. Maybe it took me a while to like really get on board, because I thought it was like, oh my god, this feels like a little bit on the nose with the whole COVID thing, you know. But it's like, no, this was years before, and I didn't have that context. But it didn't matter. My point is, like, you get to a certain point of the book where you're like, all right, this is sort of like an interesting take on this idea, on this like dystopian idea. Everyone's dead. The kids are left alive because like this virus takes out adults. And so think of it from that perspective, right? It's like this YA meets Walking Dead meets, I guess, dystopian. What's another IP that I can kind of throw at this that makes it make sense? I don't really know. Like The 100? Does that make CW's The 100? Does that make sense? Probably not. But anyways, give it a shot. If you're curious about it, give it a shot. That's all I got to say. I've been really enjoying the series, and I can't wait to go back and read book 6, because it'll get me through. It's just the number of threes, the rule of threes. I like to get through my second trilogy of the America Falls series. From there, I ended up reading Isaac Asimov's the second book of the Foundation series, and I'm just gonna, so that we can rip through this, I ended up reading the book 3 of the Foundation series as well, Foundation and Empire. These are pretty short reads. I mean, Isaac Asimov is one of those like grandfathers of sci-fi sort of thing, right? And so it was a series that I felt like I needed to read. I needed to have in my repertoire of works that I had experienced. I thought book 1 that I read like in July, I thought that one was like, it wasn't what I expected, is how I would put it. Book 2 was a little bit more structured and made sense, but it was almost like 2 books in one kind of thing, because that's kind of, they were novellas, or maybe I don't know, man. And then there's like Foundation and Empire, where it felt like it tied everything together and brought it back full circle, and I kind of enjoyed it. I should have my Goodreads up for that. If you're interested in what I'm rating these books, go follow me on Goodreads. It's Nuno XEI on Goodreads, and I think if you want to check out my ratings on anything that I've read, if you're a book reader out there as well and you're just curious to see what I'm reading and maybe jump in on the conversation, you can check my Goodreads. The profile is at Nuno XEI. Is that how it works? I don't know, search for Nuno XEI. You'll find me, and then you'll see the books that I'm reading month by month. Just in case like I stop doing these kinds of videos, or maybe I'm random with this channel anyway, so who knows what will happen. Anyway, so that's Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. I finally got through the trilogy of a very old renowned series in the past. So I jumped to Christopher Moore, Lamb. I ended up starting this book actually months ago, but then I kept putting it aside. It took me a while to just get into this. I'm not sure why. The way it started, so Christopher Moore, okay, so this is Lamb. If you read the subtitles there, it's The Gospel According to Biff, Christ's childhood pal, and it's amusing. It's extremely amusing. It's from the perspective of a friend that Jesus had, and you're basically hearing his tale of the Bible, of the books of the Bible. Maybe it sounds a little sacrilege for those of you who are super religious out there, but I'm just saying it's amusing, and it does like takes the literature into consideration when putting the continuity of the life of Jesus into context, but it goes it's derailed. If you know anything about Christopher Moore, it goes into other places, okay? And it's amusing as hell, because Biff is not the kind of character you'd think was the best friend of Jesus along the way. He's kind of like there's a lot of sexual deviancy going on here. There's like by Biff, not by Jesus. But it's just, it's hard to explain. I'd be spoiling the book by giving away the hilarious moments that made me get to about halfway through the book, and then I was addicted to the humor of the book, and I didn't expect to be, because it took me so long to get to the half of the book. So I ended up rating it relatively high because of how it all came together. It just felt like it was a fun experience. It was a really fun experience, and I love Christopher Moore. I remember reading Christopher Moore like 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And it's taken me forever to get back to his books, and I've been going to the thrift shops to look for Christopher Moore books. This particular cover setting, right? I think that maybe there's other prints of this book. I don't know. These are the ones I keep seeing. It's in this trade dress, and so these are the ones I'm looking for. So this might be the 4th or 5th book I read from Christopher Moore. I'm looking for more. And it's a lot of fun. Okay, so then I've been collecting at the thrift shops. I've been collecting this Ian Rankin author here, and there's like 45 books, I think, of Ian Rankin that I'm looking for. I'm at about 37 of the books in 1 year of collecting from only the thrift shops, these Ian Rankin books. So this is a compilation of the first 3 novels right here, Noughts and Crosses. Hide and Seek and Tooth and Nail. I read Knots and Crosses a couple months ago, and I was like, you know what? I need to start getting I need to get my groove on with Ian Rankin's books, because I've now got a good run of, like, I think it's I don't know, anywhere from 17 to 20 like stretch, where it's just like bang 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 bang. So if I like reading in continuity of the author, because I like to see the development of the author along the way as well, from his writing style perspective and stuff like that. And the character does have some continuity between these three stories. Detective Rebus is the character that you're following along the way. So Rebus, the early years. Anyways, I'm kind of enjoying them. They're just kind of like these really simple crime fic, like almost noir-esque, modern noir, if you will. I never thought I'd read crime fiction, but for some reason I kept seeing Ian Rankin's name on the shelves at the thrift shops, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start collecting this guy, and I'm going to hope for the best. Because I think I found, like, one day I found, like, I don't know, 12 or 15 books. I was like, that's a pretty good stretch. And then I was like, he's got 45 books. Too late. So I gotta go away. I gotta commit. I commit. Anyways, so Hide and Seek, pretty fun. It's kind of like the Societies of Edinburgh. There's like some shady business going on with the elites, that kind of thing, and you can't always win them all, that kind of thing. And then Tooth and Nail, it's like he goes to London to chase down, or to help track down, a serial killer that goes by the Wolfman. And again, I don't want to spoil anything along the way. And again, if you're not interested in crime fiction, it's not going to matter to you. So we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about every summary of every book. So, and then I'm trying to organize these. This isn't really in reading order. I'm kind of deviating at this point, because I want to keep them sort of organized by theme, if you will. Because then I got into he's kind of famous, at least online. I knew him from, like, YouTube for the last couple of years, and I knew of the book. And I read part of it, I don't know, a year ago or something like that. I don't remember. But I finally got into The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Counterintuitive Approach to Living a Good Life. I highly recommend this book. It's amusing. I know it sounds vulgar, but when you get into it, and he's online, so you can just search for Mark Maron on YouTube, and his YouTube channel is basically the way he writes. And so if you like him and you like the way he communicates ideas, then you're probably going to like this book. And I say pick it up, because it's a different way of taking in kind of like life rules, if you will, life principles, in a different way, with different language. It's disruptive, and sometimes you need to disrupt things like this YouTube channel in order for you to find different paths, and like different pathways in your brain to associate ideas in different ways. So, and maybe like it triggers different sparks, you know what I mean, that make you go, aha. You know what I mean? And you just, like, you get to go down that new path, So anyways, I highly recommend The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F by Mark Maron. And then I ended up finding, I found this at the thrift shop as well. Second book, Everything is Fucked, a book about hope. Now, this one is definitely better than this one. This one is a little bit meandering with the way that the prose is wrapped into the principles of, like, how do you basically not give a crap about anything to discover hope and the value of hope and meaning and purpose and stuff like that. Again, very disruptive way of getting to the point that he's trying to get at, is like when you realize that everything is fucked, if you're at the ground level, it can only get better, baby. You know what I mean? That's like the YouTube channel. So we're going to move on. And then I just read The Tipping Point this week. I think that I read this one on Tuesday. Now, this was a book that I talked about earlier in this vlog, that I ended up doing a lot of traveling, like during the whole startup phase, and when I went indie and stuff like that, and I was doing a bunch of media stuff, but it got me flying into Europe once in a while. I ended up taking this book, because this was my brother's book, I think. I ended up taking this book with me on the plane. I read it on the plane there, and that was 20-ish years ago. And so a lot of the ideas in here, I realized I had baked into some of the methodologies I've come up with along the years. For those of you who are in programming, if you've heard of the term Agile Manifesto, there's a methodology around being able to fail fast and be able to pivot. And there's other things. I'm not going to get into it. And so I've come up with, like, this draft for a book that I've been dabbling with for the last 10 years, but it's basically the agile life. It's to be able to take, like, this programming methodology and apply it to, like, the life, like how to live life in a way that you basically program things, or create, like, a high-performing conveyor lines and stuff like that. It makes sense when you put it all together. It was A Tipping Point, had concepts in here that kind of mesh in with this whole agile methodology, but so two decades have passed, and so I remembered the ideas, but I didn't remember, like, exactly how they fit in with the stories that Gladwell uses in order to make the ideas. Like, you remember them as the stories behind the principles, but by remembering the examples, you remember the principles, and that's how he gets you to keep the principles in mind, is that he he's a storyteller. That's the best way I can put it. So I recommend Tipping Point for sure. It says like how little things can make a big difference. You can apply this to life for like in different ways, right? It's not just like work or family. It's like you take the principles and then you apply the principles in whatever way that makes sense to your life. And then his other book, it was Blink, that I ended up reading, and I didn't remember if I read this because I believe my brother also had this one, but I ended up finding this one at the thrift shop because I'm looking for the Gladwell books at this point, and I knew of this one, and I'm pretty sure I probably started reading this one because as I started reading it, I was like, these ideas sound familiar to me as well. So Blink is like, let's say it's the power of thinking without thinking. It's basically like your impulse, like trusting your instincts, and sometimes they can go wrong because you're basically mind reading events around you in like split seconds, and your brain is actually reacting before your logic has kicked in to explain why it's reacting and how it's reacting. And sometimes you don't know why it's reacting the way it is, like whether it's emotionally or like instinct, again, just like taking action and going like, wow, how did I do that? Like I didn't even know, right? Well, it's because your brain is already programmed to like do things on instinct, and sometimes we stop it from doing that because we try to force logic into trusting our gut, trusting our instincts. So a little bit again of like agile, I guess, ideas going on here. Sometimes you just gotta not be afraid. Your culture put that behind you. You sort of like take leaps. If you've seen like anything, the way that I behave on this channel is or the things you might have taken away with, like I've talked about stuff I've done in life. I don't talk about a lot, but I'm not afraid to take risks. And like the house, selling it, not having a plan B, just getting rid of all my stuff, not really having all of it back now because I left it on the side of the road. It doesn't matter. They're just things. And if I were to sell the house, I'd probably have to quit my job because I probably couldn't work overseas. And you know what? I didn't have a plan. It didn't matter. I'd figure it out. That's like, because anything can happen in the blink of the eye. You can die in a blink of an eye. And so then what? Right? So you kind of think of it from that perspective, is like, trust your gut and trust that you're going to get out of problems, but you have to be active. Like you got to put yourself in a position so that you can take action, right? And just be able to act on your instincts, I guess. It's not like he doesn't get into like sometimes it can go wrong, go sideways on you. It absolutely can. People are very much afraid of just trusting their instincts sometimes, anyways. And then I'm going to try to put these in order of how I read them, and also order of publication in case it matters to anybody out there. But I ended up having this collection of Hellboy novels for years, decades. I remember buying these off of eBay, possibly. This one's in pounds, £7, but I ended up buying, I don't know how many of them, maybe 5 or 6 of them off of eBay, because these are really, really hard to find. I'm not sure today, but back in the day, they were hard to find. Anyway, so I've had these because I love Hellboy. Like, I have all of the comics, the Hellboy, the BPRD, the Ape Sapiens. I like Mike Mignola as an artist and as a storyteller in the comic format, but then he started working with authors to write these novels. And so his first attempt was with Christopher Golden. I'm familiar with Christopher Golden because I know his name from a bunch of gaming novels, which I don't know if you can see below me on this side. No, you can't. It's not in the frame, but I got a bunch of gaming novels down there from like the 90s. And Christopher Golden was one of those names that would pop up on those novels. And so I was like, well, I'm going to give it a shot because I love Hellboy. This was not a very strong landing. But anyways, it was fun. It's still a Hellboy-ish story, but it did things that felt a little bit non-Hellboy to me. But it was a first attempt, and in any case, I finally got started on Hellboy novels. And so then I picked up my second book, which is The Bones of Giants. I remembered reading this probably 15 years ago. Like, I got to speed read this one slightly because I remember the arching plot. I just remember the details, And same thing with this one. As I started reading it, I was like, I kind of remember this. He kind of gets the hammer of Thor there. It's kind of funny and fun. I don't know. I'm not sure funny. But anyways, Christopher Golden as well. His writing does evolve from a Hellboy perspective. He started to kind of get Hellboy a little bit more, in my opinion. It started to feel more like a Hellboy story. The whole hammer of Thor and like what that implies, like there's a bit of a like pseudo possession going on here or something like that. So I'm not going to go any further than that. If there are Hellboy fans out there and you're kind of curious about the novels, you can get into it. It's fun. It was a higher scored rating than Lost Army for sure. And then I ended up going into the anthologies. There were these anthologies that were released by Dark Horse Press. I think, pretty sure. Yeah, Dark Horse Press. And so Odd Jobs was the first compilation anthology with a bunch of writers in there. And I got to say, I was pleasantly impressed by the quality of almost every short story in this collection. They felt like Hellboy stories. They felt like Hellboy moments. It felt like, so just to give you people who don't know anything about Hellboy, it's kind of like a modern detective noir action with a little bit of Lovecraftian mixed in, I guess. Anyways, it's It's a lot of fun. It's creative. It's supposed to be lighthearted in its take on things, but it mashes up folklore with like a modern setting. And then it's kind of like this. BPRD is the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, which is the organization Hellboy is a part of. I'm not going to give you the whole history of Hellboy, but I do love Hellboy. I do recommend reading Hellboy. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. The point is, all of these authors did a really good job of telling folktale stories in a modern setting with a bit of that noir detective meets Lovecraftian action vibe. Again, it's so hard to explain Hellboy to people who have no idea what Hellboy's about. Anyways, and then I jumped to the second. I mean, this is not really in order of the way that I've jumped to these, but I've been reading them in chronological order. Anyways, I got to Otter Jobs. The stories in this, they were almost better than the first one. It's crazy. These short stories are so good. They're so good. They almost don't feel like Hellboy stories per se, You read them and they're like, they make sense to have Hellboy in there. But they're just good stories, even if it wasn't a Hellboy story. Does that make sense? I can't go into all of it because, again, it's a bunch of short stories, anthologies by writers. I'm not sure if they're all well-known writers or not. None of them stand out to me as other works that I could just call out for that at the top of my head. But highly recommend it if you love anthologies and you just like to kind of try different kinds of anthologies. Highly recommend Hellboy, Odd Jobs, and Otter Jobs. I think I gave on Goodreads Otter Jobs a 5 out of 5. I was thoroughly impressed. It's such an exciting read. So Hellboy, it's a novel by Tom Piccirilli. Man. So these genres are it's like a mashup. It's like a hybrid mashup genre thing when it comes to Hellboy. But this one, on top of it, added that Southern Gothic vibe to it. It's like the Bayou, man. The Bayou. It's like you got like hungry gators. You got crazy serial killers. You got possessed pastors. You got some witches in the swamps with some swamp-bred Lovecraftian monstrosity. It's all in here, and somehow it made sense. As I was reading, I was like, there is no way this is going to work. There's no way. No, it does. It does. In the simplest way possible. I got through this and went, I didn't think I'd enjoy it. I'm not sure if I gave it a 5. It was probably a 4 for me, right? I got 4.5, but Goodreads can't go to 0.5. So, but I probably I'd stay at the 4 mark because I laughed out loud a couple times. I don't think I should have. The way that it was written. I'm going to be looking up more from Tom Piccirilli. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that more or less right. Because I really enjoyed the writing style, is what I was going to say. I did this in hybrid mode. I had an audiobook for this while following it along, which makes me go just slightly a little bit faster. I can do like 80 pages an hour without an audiobook. If I hybrid read, I can get to 100 pages an hour, is basically how it works. So one way or the other, if I commit to something, it's usually done within a night, and I really enjoy this. I went to the bar, listened to half an hour, came back from the bar, listened to half an hour, and then I finished the rest of the book. In like 2 or 3 hours. Really enjoy that one. And this one does not have an audiobook, so it's taking me a little longer in the sense of like I've got to commit, but like half of the book was read in like, I don't know, an hour session and an hour session, that kind of thing. So it's probably gonna take me like 4 hours to finish a book like this. And it's on earth as it is in hell. This started, again, I had a biblical, I just like read Lamb, so like this month, but then another one with a biblical theme. I was like, what is going on? But it's like the opener of here, the stinger, if you will, and then the first act, the first quarter is like there's like seraphim basically burned down library inside the Vatican that they're trying to destroy a scroll that was written by Jesus. It's like it's gonna like be a very controversial thing if it like hits the public, blah 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 blah. And so BPRD gets called in, and they have to basically track down these seraphim, these angels. Like if you followed me on this channel, I do analysis breakdown, and so there's a reason why I stopped halfway through, is because I bet you I'm gonna experience something halfway through, and it's gonna be crazy. There's always the phase 2 to phase 3 arc that you hear me talking about in a bunch of different media. Maybe you don't, because you don't care about this kind of stuff, but I care about it. Because I can't help it. And it's usually the moment that it's the false victory, right? Is that you finally, like in this particular case, they finally get away. It's like there's no way anything could go wrong. Bam, Leviathan in the ocean. It's like gets swallowed by the whale. That kind of thing. It's like yeah, and then Hellboy disappears for like 2 or 3 chapters. That's your phase 2 to phase 3 moment right there, and I just needed to know if it was possible. And by the way, it has been true for all the Hellboy books. It's almost perfectly to the page or to the chapter ending being read at that percentage mark, 25, 50, 75, right, and 100. I don't know why I derailed on that again, but that's the way I am. So I'm halfway through, so I can't talk about this entire book, but it's at a pretty exciting spot right now. I figured 2 more, I don't know, take an hour here and an hour there, and this weekend, Hellboy on Hell as It Is in Earth, written by Brian Hodge. Fun read. I didn't expect that I'd enjoy this, because that opener was kind of like, oh, it's kind of a little bit cliche, but I was like, oh no, it's holding together, and the writing's pretty strong. So that's another Hellboy book I'll recommend. I just love Hellboy, man. Love Hellboy. And then earlier in the month, so I'm kind of going in reverse here. I read Dorian Gray. This is a book I've known about this idea for like 35 years. Like I've known about the story because I'm a big fan of Gothic horror in general, and I knew the concept behind it. But boy, I didn't expect the way that this was written, the way it flowed. I really enjoy this. I think I gave this a 5 out of 5. Like this was no joke. And by the way, the book is really pretty. It's got this like cardboard. This is a thrift book. Crazy thrift book. Anyways, it's got this cardboardy kind of cover, and it just feels right. It's got a little ribbon in there. I know it's not important, but man, it feels right. It feels good. It's pretty simple print, of a public domain book that's out there by Paper Mill Press, but it's just it's a good quality book is what I'm saying. It feels so good to hold, and so it felt really good to read. And so this was the book I would go out after work. I would go out to my deck out back. It's a screened in deck, so the mosquitoes can't get me. I just get a beer, and then just bam, get through some Dorian Gray. And I love the way that this friggin' book ended. It was right to the end. If you haven't read Dorian Gray, I do recommend this one. As from a Gothic literature perspective, probably one of my favorite Gothic lit that I've read so far this year. I've been going back and reading some of those old, like the Draculas, the Frankensteins, the Baskerville Hounds, right? I've been meaning to get through more of these. This brings me to the final book, which is, I had just started reading it, but I'm so excited about this. I'm very tempted to do a series on this channel. I'm not sure how or what, but I've only read 2 of the entries so far in SCP Foundation. This is the Black Manual. It is Secure, Contain, Protect. I had no idea what this was. I think I talked about it in one update, and then it turns out in one of the comments, like, it let me know that, oh my god, like, this is actually a really well-known property. And it's like it's like a wiki community of people who just stories of these like horrific things. And when you start learning about what this is, you start realizing how much it's influenced things like in modern media. I think, like, what was it, The Cabin in the Woods by Joss Whedon, right? The Joss Whedon movie that came out a couple years ago. I was like, this is probably this, like the creatures, the monsters in cages and stuff like that, and like this house in the middle of nowhere. It's just like, it feels like it took a bunch of those concepts, and it might have come, or influence. It was influenced by this. I'm not saying it was this. I'm saying it might be influenced by this. The first entry in this is like, the Shy Guy reminded me a lot of like Slender Man, that video game, I think. And I'm like, is that kind of what it's about? Like, sometimes people take like these ideas in other media, and then they create SCPs about things that are just like weird stories out there that they just convert into actual creatures. I'm not sure. I did this as a crowdfunding campaign. I got 3 of these books and a bunch of extras. I got all the extras for this because they looked like cool books, but I had no idea what the SCP was. That's what I'm saying. I got them on a whim because they just looked like cool books that I'd like to invest in. And yeah, I got like tags. I got like stickers. I got bookmarks. I got some weird things in plastics I still haven't opened over there somewhere. And I got the other 2 books over there. I got orange and red or something like that. I'm not sure. Anyways, they're still wrapped. But I think I might want to do a series on SCP. I'm not sure what I would do. Maybe talk about each. But anyways, this is one where just, once a night or 2, I'll read 1 entry. I was like, that's enough. They're really creepy. Highly recommended. This is all, again, these are wiki submissions. They're online. This is a community driven, I guess, project out there. I still haven't gone to the wiki because now I want to read my books first. It's not going to spoil me, because that's the whole point of it. It's like nothing's really canon, because it's like the community sort of decides what stays and what doesn't go. And it's like, you just kind of like, it's just fun. God damn, it's fun. And sometimes maybe that's a good way of bringing this back around and like wrapping this up, because this vlog has gotten really long and it's like deviated all over the place. But it's the idea of like, this is all read in the last 3 weeks or so, right? Because the month's not over. The month's not over, and I'm kind of, oh my god, my whiskey. Wait. My stack of books almost knocked over my Black Label whiskey. That's my friend. I shouldn't be talking about this. Anyways, I just started Ready Player One. So I'm about a quarter of the way through Ready Player One over like just a night here. I was bored. I started reading. I was like, oh god damn, this is like the retro in this, the retro references in this is like the man, nostalgia vibe of this is crazy. And for those of you who've read Ready Player One, or I think there was a movie, I'm pretty sure there was a movie actually. I didn't go see it. Steven Spielberg, yeah. The beginning of this talks about the SSI games, like the I don't want to be talking about premises. I said I was going to talk about premises, but it was the nostalgia in this. It goes back to games I was playing in the early 90s, like the SSI games. What does that stand for again? Simulated System I don't even know. But anyways, there was a bunch of them. They did all of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons games, right? The Tomb of Horrors, the Ravenloft game, the Secret of the Silver Blades, the Greyhawk one. There's Forgotten Realms is in there for sure. Did they do the Dark Sun ones? Okay, that started deviating, but we're talking about the ones that, like, the early 90s ones. Anyways, that comes up in this. They bring up Joust, and I was like, oh my god, Joust. You don't understand. I had that on Atari. It's like, I was an addict of Joust, and like that was the competition game that we'd play in the 80s. As a kid, like that's the one I decimate people on. Joust. I love Joust. Anyways, and that was in the book. Joust was in the book as the first kind of like the first kind of challenge thing that the guy has to go through. I'm like, I'm amused. I'm amused. And it's loaded with nostalgia references and stuff like that. So that's also a book that I've started. As you can see, I'm kind of like uncontrolled here. I'm reading basically 3 books concurrently, and that's because I just finished the 4th one. So it's just that's how my brain works. I go all over the place, and eventually things get done. And I could give you pretty decent summaries of all of these if I was at the bar drinking some beer. If you want to hear it, but like things get retained. I don't know how sometimes, but they do. It's like pattern based, and it's just like the more hyper focused I can be when I get through something, the more I absorb it. That's all. So what's the count here? So I read 17 books, and I'm reading 3 more. So I'll have 20 books done in the month of August. Do I think I can maintain this pace? Probably not. If you're curious to know more and you want to get in on some of the reading and stuff like that and the banter, now you know what I'm up to and what I'm reading, and maybe that can turn into content that appeases enough people where I can start doing TBRs again, right? So to be reads, like what I plan to read the next month. To be fair, I don't think I plan to read any of these this month. Maybe I want to get into Hellboy more than anything else this month. That's it. Everything else was like, I got this book. Maybe I'll get into it finally. And then I do. And then it's finished. And then I move on to the next one. And so I've kind of enjoyed that approach to it.